This is Radiant Voices Media.
Welcome to the Paths We Take podcast. I'm your host, Jordan DeSange. Let's hit a path. Hey there, and welcome to another episode of The Paths We Take. Today's guest is Brady, a senior trainer at Platfrm, and this conversation isn't about highlight reels or overnight successes. It's about what happens when life strips things back. Divorce, losing a stable job, losing passion, and being forced to figure out who you are without the labels you were once holding on to. We talk about rebuilding purpose. We talk about shifting from asking, what do I want, to what does the collective need from me? We talk about reducing noise, finding joy in the smaller moments, and why community matters more than trying to do everything on your own. If you're in a season where things feel uncertain or uncomfortable, then this episode is for you. Without further ado, let's get into today's path. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Last minute means a lot.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That's all right. But the first question that I like to ask everybody on the podcast, on the show, is if somebody listening right now had your autobiography out in front of them, what are some things that they would find in that story?
Oh, so many mistakes.
Okay. All right.
So many mistakes.
Let's get into it then.
Oh. It's an interesting place to start. It was the first thing that popped into mind. But it's almost feels like definitely the last 10 years that there's been a sense of failing forward. Paired with like riding the coattails of other people's success. And I know that fundamentally it's not true. Like I liken that to body dysmorphia. Like, people know that they're strong, they know that they're fit, but it's not what they see. I know that I haven't been failing forward, and I know that I haven't been riding the success of other people's coattails, but that's the last 10 years have felt. And I definitely think that were I to put out an autobiography on something that the highlight of what I perceive to be my failures leading to successes would be, I guess, the focal point. Yeah.
What does that mean? So when somebody is reading that autobiography and, they're reading about your failures and, failing forward, what would that mean?
Probably making wrong decisions. I think it would be all around decision making. We spoke a little bit before we started around how I moved to Sweden when I was 17 and did year 12 there. I came back to Australia for a couple of years before moving back, and I had a couple incredible opportunities in Sweden in the hospitality field where I could have gone into a level of ownership in cafes and restaurants with my employers. But I instead decided to chase the relationship that I was in at that time and moved to Japan instead. So it was a long distance relationship, lot to that one. And I think on the face of it, that could be seen as a wrong decision and therefore a failure in a career that I was trying to chase. Because at that point in time, I really wanted to be in hospitality. I wanted to be a restaurant owner. I wanted to work in cafes and bars and operate that and bring my dreams and passions to life in that field. So when that was presented to me on a silver platter, it was kind of like, well, I ran away from that. And that was a failure of my character for making a wrong decision. I don't actually believe it's a wrong decision, but, if you were reading that and didn't know me from a bar of soap, you'd go, well, that might have been the wrong decision.
When people talk about, it's not the right time or everything happens at the right time, do you think that are part of your chapters, or what do you say to those comments?
I like to be a bit comical with it and say the right time is the time that you choose. I don't necessarily believe that, things happen for a reason or things happen when they're meant to happen. I think things happen when you would like them to happen, and you need to action the things to do that. And yeah, so I could have done that. it was an absolute opportunity, and it was a choice that I had to make. I don't think it was about, am I too young? Am I this? Am I capable? It was, is this actually what I want to do right now? And no,
No.
it
Okay.
wasn't.
Yeah. Is there any part of you that thinks that self-sabotage was part of that? Because that's quite an interesting story, and like the fact that you were aware and you are aware right now that, hospitality was something that you wanted to get
Mm,
into when the opportunity comes, and going and picking something not completely different, but yeah, something different, right? And I think like that is a common story for some people, right? They're
mm,
presented with opportunities, and whether it be internally, I know myself, I've gone through that numerous times. Oh, well, I'm not ready, or I'm waiting for this certain moment, or,
mm,
just talking myself out of a lot of things. And I think there is, for myself, there have been pivotal moments where self sabotage has, conflicted and caused, I guess, different outcomes in my life. For you, do you feel like there were pivotal moments of self-sabotage throughout those early moments?
absolutely. And self sabotage has been, or was, the topic um, when I was, speaking with therapists for completely unrelated topics. But it was clear, and it was identified that self sabotage has been a common trope or a common thread around pivotal and non pivotal um, scenes in my life, through friendships, relationships, career opportunities, um, health choices as well. Yeah, self sabotage and excuse making has been a common theme the last 10 to 15 years, and it's one that I continue, or at least I like to think I'm continuing to work on.
Mhm. Now, before we move on to the next chapter of the
Hmm.
path, if we stay on that chapter of, your path and your journey, what do you think your character was like back then?
Oh, I was a fool.
Okay. All right. What do you mean by that?
um just, well, it was a couple of years ago. That was about 8 or 9 years ago. So I was just young. I was just young and foolish and aware, but unaware of, I guess, the ongoing effect of what decisions are. Up until that point, a decision was a decision, and then that's it. There was no like collateral to decision making, or at least I didn't feel that there was collateral to decision making. So I think, looking back on it now and on that chapter, and it would be so much harder to tap back into those opportunities now that I'm so far removed from it, and because I've already said no to it at one point in time. Not to say that it wouldn't be possible, but to dive back into it and to open yourself and to have those connections that you had back then open themselves back to you. It's kind of like putting a wall between you when you say no. And that's the kind of stuff that I didn't see back then. And I think, that would be foolish, but it was youthful
Well,
ignorance.
I was just gonna say, like, I think that's a common thing as well. Like, we think we're invincible sometimes, like, especially when we're in our 20s,
Mm,
our early 20s, like, we think the world is at our oyster. And yes, it is in many ways, but
yeah.
I think that decision making is a skill, right? It's
Mm,
like any skill in our toolbox. It has to be sharpened, it has to be something that we've gained over the years. And it's just very interesting that, having that self-awareness. But I think it's also something that it's so hard to if the person listening right now is in their early 20s, and I know there's many of you, like, I think we all think we're invincible, and we all think like, oh, my actions are not going to have consequences in, 5 years, or not even consequences, but an impact, right?
mm,
Like in 5, 10 years. And sometimes they do. I look back at, when I was in my 20s, and yeah, I did things that I'm like, even on this podcast, like episodes that are no longer up at talking about topics that I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have like done that because it could affect, things in the future or whatever. So I think like it's just something that we all kind of go through, and like we all maybe need to go through. I don't know if that's the correct phrase, but like I personally believe that like sometimes we do need to get over those things in our story and in our chapters, really.
Yeah. I think it's everybody will go through it, and it comes back to the decision making is you will then choose to learn from it, or you won't. You will either gain some wisdom in, okay, well, this decision will now have this effect, and this decision will have this effect, and the way you will make the decisions will change. You still have to make the decision like that. That is almost a non-negotiable. You have to make the decision, but it's how you make the decision and how you can mitigate any damage, if any. Yeah.
So your path took you to Japan.
Yeah.
Where did your story go from there?
So I moved to Japan to be with my partner at the time. We had met in Australia, in Adelaide. It was meant to be a bit of a fling when we met. I had already decided to move to Sweden. She had already decided to move to Japan. And it was an awesome 6 months. And we kind of just went, well, let's just keep it going. So we did about 16 months long distance between Australia, Japan, and then Sweden and Japan before it got a bit too tough. And we went, okay, somebody's got to make a decision here. She was on a bit of a government contract, chasing a career. I was also chasing a career, but mine, especially hospitality, is a little bit more fluid. So in the end, I went, okay, well, I'll move to Japan and we'll give it a year and a half. And that happened to be when COVID went down. And it was just circumstance that if we left Japan during COVID, we wouldn't be allowed to go back for however long COVID was going to last. So 1 year turned into 3.5 years. And that became quite tough. But during that time, she started a YouTube channel. And then on weekends, I would help her film. And then that during COVID, became quite successful. I was working as an English tutor at the time. And then I got to a point where the YouTube channel was actually making us more than my teachers or my tutor's salary. So because I wasn't having a great time as a tutor, I'd been there for longer than I wanted to be. I wasn't having a great time. We made the decision that I could leave my job as a tutor. YouTube would supplement that salary. And then in the meantime, I became a video game streamer on Twitch. So that was a fun last 2.5 years there as well. So a lot happened in that 3.5 years. We got married, which was awesome. And it was just like, it's a conflicting period because it was to some degree some of the best years ever. It was so much fun doing new things every single weekend. It was so much fun getting paid to play video games, which I was doing as a hobby, and then meeting people online because of it and, building connections through that as well. Some who I still talk to today, even though I stopped streaming like 4 or 5 years ago. So, but the last year that I was there, I didn't want to be there anymore. Once you're there for a period of time, you do start to see not the underbelly, but just the not nicer things of cultures and societies you become aware of. I was foolish to depression taking hold. Convinced myself that I wasn't because I was married to the person that I loved. I was doing the thing that I loved, and I was in a country that was pretty cool. But yeah, that last 12 months that we were there, I think really planted the seed of what was to follow later down the line in the next chapter.
Yeah. Well, that's a very interesting chapter, I think, because I think that's I look back to that time as well, and similar story in the sense that that's when I moved here to Australia, and my move was not, it didn't really go as planned as well because of course COVID hit. And I think everybody might have I shouldn't say everybody, a lot of people might have similar stories. We just didn't know what was to come at that time.
For how long it was going to last.
Exactly.
As well.
So for you to be quote unquote stuck somewhere for, the 2 to 3 years, I think is a very common story and a very difficult one because you kind of have to, yes, you have to shift things, but you just really didn't know, like a lot of us didn't really know what the path was to come really. And I think it was a depressive state for a lot of people. It
Mm.
sounds like, for you, it's a very interesting story as well because like, you look at that story and I think like some people can look at that and be like, well, he was quite successful, like he
Yep.
had maybe a YouTube channel, Twitch, and like, that's something that a lot of people are striving for these days, that freedom of working
Yep.
from home or working on your own or whatever. But then again, behind the scenes, we don't really know what's going closed doors. We don't really know the battles that are people going through.
Mm.
We don't really know, like, is this something that is actually making somebody happy,
Yep.
or is it just part of their path and where they need to be at right
Mm.
now? And do you think that was where you needed to be at right then, or was that just something that, that chapter that just life took you there, do you think?
I think it's the latter. Life took me there. Yeah, because when I was in it, it was, well, I don't want to be here. Why do I need to be doing this? And it came back to decision making again, and also the um, what was the phrase that we used earlier? I'm trying to think it now. When we were talking about failing forward, oh, the self sabotage. So talking about self sabotage, I was absolutely an alcoholic at that period of time, absolutely. But I was trying to justify it by saying, well, Japan doesn't have alcohol tax. So I can get high quality whiskeys, and I love whiskey and wine, for, $12. So I was going, well, whenever am I going to get this opportunity to do this again? So I was using that to justify the expense and then consuming it and drinking it and enjoying it. And then it became part of something that I did on my stream because I've got the history as a bartender. So, people would be like, I'll donate $10, make a cocktail with XYZ. And I'd be like, cool, well, I'm not going to waste that. So I'll drink it. And then it became a connection of my streaming room is a place where I drink. So then during the day when I was doing some work or anything like that, it's like, well, got nothing else to do. I'm a house husband and a Twitch streamer. It's 1 p.m. May as well just have myself a little drink. And it was those things that, again, I acknowledged but didn't recognize. And I think there's a distinction between the two of them, where I knew I was drinking way too much, but was just going, but I'm not an alcoholic. And this definitely wouldn't be a catalyst to depression. And it's definitely not compounding how I already feel.
Yeah. So you mentioned then that you knew you didn't want to be in that situation. You knew you didn't want that chapter anymore.
Mm.
What kind of got you through to the next chapter?
Well, the idea that it would get better and I'd actually get to do something that I wanted to do. Towards the end of the time there, I didn't want to stream anymore. Like, it was losing its fun, not the connection with the people, but playing video games was a hobby, and now that hobby was monetized. And it became I have to do this. And I got to a point where it's just like, okay, I can increase the days that I do this to make more money, but then doing that meant I spent less time with my wife. So it was it was an awful give or take at the time. So the idea that, okay, it's coming to the end, COVID seems to be coming to the end, it's going to get better. We're going to move to Australia. We had a property lined up, So once again, all of these things were just like, okay, it's property, married, successful YouTube career, successful Twitch career. With all the work that I'd done, I could work into almost any job that didn't require a degree and make something of it. Things were looking up. So going into that next chapter, I left Japan first, and my ex, she had some stuff to tidy up in Japan before she left. So we did another 6 months long distance with me leaving Japan first. And it took me about 3 months being back in Adelaide before, I think it was almost like delayed depression, where the shit that I'd been suppressing in Japan hit me here in Australia, and yeah, spiraled from there.
Okay. You mentioned that, it was the idea that got you through. I think it sounds like too that yeah, things lined up and you had a bit of a plan, but things also like, we were coming out of COVID at that time and
Mm.
things were naturally rolling into motion. But how did you, I guess, turn that idea? Because ideas are great, but like we need to have sometimes a push or we need to have sometimes something to put that idea into motion. How did you go from idea to, getting yourself out of there and, realizing that depression was actually something that was a part of everything?
Uh, I think I I finally verbalized that I don't want to be here anymore to my ex partner, um, and just went I want to go. Like we've been here 2.5 years longer than we originally planned. We've had a great time, but I want to call it. She comes from a very supportive family, and they helped us, acquire the property and everything like that. And they wanted her to come home as well. They only expected us to be gone for a year as well, so they wanted to see their daughter and all of that. Moving into that stage of the relationship, where it's like, okay, we've got to start having the conversations around: are we going to have a family? Are we not? If we do, where do we want to be? All of those kinds of conversations. So, yeah, the action to bring it all back to Australia started with, I don't want to be here anymore. And then those things kind of started to fall into place. Yeah. As you said, the ball went into motion really. And it went from an idea to, all right, I've got the plane ticket home. Yeah. I'm going to go first. You're going to tidy up for 6 months, yeah. X, Y, Z. Yeah. So that's how we got back. And that was about 3.5, 4 years ago now.
Let's get then into the Australia chapter, those first few months. What did you started off by saying that, that's when you realized that depression was, a factor. Where does that story start and where did it go from there?
Yep. I was catching the bus to work. So I was living out in just one of the further suburbs, northeast. So I was catching the bus to work. I was working at the Adelaide Oval at the time as senior roof climb leader. So tourism, hospitality-ish, but also quite physically demanding because you got to go climb the roof 12 times a day. And that was a lot of fun. So the first 3 months was brilliant. I got to see all of my friends again. I got to see some family. Moved into the property, like all the exciting stuff. And then sitting on the bus, going to work, I got to see the CBD of Adelaide, and just had this like almost made me want to throw up sickening moment where I just went, I don't want to fucking be here. I don't want to be here either. And it was like I was remembering when I first left Australia all those years ago for Sweden for the hospitality opportunity. I told myself I'm never coming back to Australia. So that was going to be my final international move. And it's like all these other things happened that I forgot that my purpose or that my intention back then when I was 20 years old was to not come back here, to not come back to the place that is so far away from all of the things that I'm interested in. So that happened, and I got to work and I went, hey, can I just take a sick day? I don't feel well. I went home and tried to sit with it, and yeah, just couldn't, just spiraled and just continued to spiral over the 3 months that I didn't have my person there either. And for context, she's quite, or was at least as far as I'm aware, a quite high anxiety individual. So when I tried to approach this with her, when she had 3 months left to pack down her life in the country that she actually wanted to be in as well, and it's all fair for her to say, and she did. She went, I can't actually handle this right now. Can we talk about this when I get back? Completely fair for somebody to say who's had that jumped on them. Again, leading into it, it's like everything's like lining up. We are good here. And then imagine you get a phone call one day going, no, I want to get out. So yeah, it was quite shocking for her, and she kind of just tried to be supportive, but just went, I can't actually handle this. And I guess without acknowledging it at the time, even though it was only a couple of years ago, it was very isolating. It felt like I couldn't talk about how I felt and how I didn't want to be there, and just became more and more and more closed off from everything, and was looking for avenues of how can I leave? How can I move? So yeah, that was a 3-month spiral that shocked her even more when she returned, because I was not the same person that left Japan 6 months earlier. It was a completely different person when she got back.
Yeah. That spiral and that turning into a different person,
Mm.
were things slowly then shifting upwards, do you think, after that? Or how did you get yourself, or how did others get you? Where did that story kind of make a shift?
Well, that story doesn't make a shift for
Okay.
another 18 months
Okay.
or 2 years. So
Okay.
she comes back. I let her know that I still feel the way that I do. And that's a rigmarole of 3 months of, so you want to leave me, and no, I don't want to leave you. I just don't want to be here. And that couldn't be healed or connected. So unfortunately, we did end up splitting up, and I had to move out. I was living in my friend's garage for a couple of weeks before I could find a place to sleep, and then, finally found a place to sleep, and then my job at Adelaide Oval was terminated. So I was on a probationary period, and they went, well, everything going on in your life, we actually can't support you in this. So unfortunately, we're not going to give you this full-time contract. So then I had to go back to cafe work, which was a reminder of the opportunities that I missed elsewhere because I was now just an employee again. And yeah, it was another 12 months of realizing that I made the wrong decision leaving her and trying to fix that, but continuing to, what I felt like, fail in every other aspect. Losing a job that I put, all of my eggs in the basket for, and then becoming just a barista again, and sleeping in my mate's spare room, not having anything of my own. It was like I didn't bring any value to a relationship anymore, so I don't actually deserve to be with her again, but there was a love that exists. And yeah, so eventually she made the decision to move back to Japan, and that's where she is now, and very, very happy for it. It's the place that she always wanted to be. And, in hindsight, had the relationship have continued, maybe it wouldn't have continued because I never wanted to move back there, and she did. So there was always going to be a bit of somebody had to sacrifice what they wanted to do to make it work.
Were you during that period looking for, because you're saying that you knew you didn't want to be here, were you looking for, like, in the back of your mind, oh, I want to go back to Sweden, or oh, I want to go here?
Yeah.
What was that
It was
like
all
for
about
you?
getting back to Europe.
Okay.
It was all about getting back to Europe.
Okay.
Sweden especially just feels, it might sound silly, but it feels like home. Like the climate, we talked about heat earlier. Like, I don't like hot weather. Yeah. I love colder climate. I love the access to Europe and to Africa and to the Middle East, where, it's the same as getting on a flight to Melbourne, but you're going to a whole new country and culture and new exposure and new foods and people. So that kind of lifestyle appeals to me so much more than what we do have in Australia. We have a very cushy, comfortable, happy, safe lifestyle here, and I don't want to take that away from anybody that enjoys it. It's just not the lifestyle that I'm after. So yeah, that's what it was all about at the time. It was all about, I want to go to Europe. I want to be back in Europe. I want to be doing European things. I want to be there. And I'll always maintain, and it's probably empty for a lot of people who have been on the receiving end of something like this, that I never actually wanted to leave her. I just didn't want to be here. But she didn't want to be there.
For that 18-month, during that 18-month chapter, were you looking for ways to, whether it be therapy or whether it be things to help yourself out of that situation? What did that look like? Or was it just a continual spiral, do you think?
Once I got my feet under me with that cafe job, it did come to a point where I was like, okay, well, I need I can't just work in cafes forever. At that time I didn't want to be in hospitality anymore either. So I'd moved past that, but it's what I knew best. I was like, okay, let's get back into it. And I sat with my best friends who I was living with at the time and just went, okay, what am I actually good at? What am I good at that I can make a career, and what do I enjoy? Because it's got to be 50-50. You got to be good at it, and you also have to enjoy it. And then I was thinking about my job at Adelaide Oval, and I loved how physically demanding it was. Really, really enjoyed the ardor of climbing the roof every day, multiple times, but then also taking 16 people with you to talk about the Oval and then Adelaide City and all of those things, and sell how incredible the life here is, because it is. And then I love the questions afterwards and the interaction with individuals, and people saying they've flown all the way over here from England to be at Adelaide Oval because it's the best cricket ground in the world, and learning that as well. So what we identified over a period of time was that I love physicality and I love people. It's like, okay, well, how can I make this a job? And then I think somebody in passing said that, oh, you'd probably make a good PT. And that's how I started to turn that around. Looked into a Cert 3 and 4, found Fit College, won the scholarship, which was pretty cool. So we did a similar interview and got chatting, and yeah, they granted me a scholarship. So my Cert 3 was covered, and then half of Cert 4. Completed that, and then got their Dux equivalent, which was also pretty cool because I've never really been acknowledged academically. So that was new for me, and that was pretty cool. And while I was doing that, I was also seeking a therapist as well, just to help keep me on that forward motion track, because the self-sabotage would have come in. As I said, I've never been praised really academically, so there were a couple times throughout the course where I was pretty down because I felt like I was falling behind, and I felt like I was dumb, and I felt like I couldn't study because I don't know how to study. And the therapist that I was seeing at the time was really quite good at just keep chipping along. You don't have to be the best, you just have to do it. And things just started to once again fall into place. But the difference this time was that I wasn't shying away from it. I wasn't trying to sabotage the opportunities.
It sounds like you had some interesting conversations with your friend at the time as well. What was your community like during that period? Were you someone that drove community away? Were you someone that relied on it? What did that look like for you?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
A little bit of both. At that time, I was really, really happy with my friends and the people that were close to me. 5 or 6 of them that were really close to me and were aware of everything, and then a couple others that were just skirting the fence of it. I don't think I was driving further community away, but I didn't want to let anybody else in, because there was definitely, it's holding a lot of embarrassment around.
Just gonna ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Very, very embarrassed. And it's probably an outdated way of thinking, but I was coming back to that feeling of failure. I felt like I'd failed as a man, for sure. And I couldn't define what a man is or what success as a man is, but that was the feeling that just sat, of just I have failed, not as a person, but as a man. So, yeah, and that was quite embarrassing.
Okay. What does that mean, failing as a man, do you think?
For me, it's going against a promise. If you do what you say and you say what you do, and leaving my partner, and we all make promises to people that we don't keep, but I'm sure we've all promised a partner at the time that I'll never leave you, but that's something that really, really sat with me beyond the 18 months that it took for me to get really moving, and probably only disappeared within the last 6 months. that embarrassment and that fear of failure, or that feeling of failure, I should say. It stuck a long time.
So you got your Cert 3 and 4.
Yep.
You started kind of that path.
Mhm.
That was the next path, I assume.
Yep.
Where did that start, and what opportunities do you think arised there?
So I started at F45, which was just down the road from the cafe that I was working at. So a lot of the people that I was serving as a barista were also at F45, and just natural flow of conversation. Oh, I finished my Cert 3. Oh, I'm doing this. I want to get into fitness. And I was introduced to the owners of that F45. And yeah, once I finished my Cert 3, I walked straight into a job with them. And I love the community aspect of that F45 in particular. It was in an area down south which is very family orientated. So I'd say 90% of the clients were just mum and dads that just wanted to move. They didn't necessarily want to be stronger or better or turn their life around. They just wanted to move and feel good about themselves again. And because they were all parents, they'd all stick around after the class and talk, and they'd bring their children in and things like that. And it was a lot of fun. But the work itself, I didn't believe in. The F45 model is not what I believed in. And I had a friend at the time who was training as a reformer instructor at Platfrm, and she just went, I think you'd be a great fit here. So I DM'd the owner, in a polite way, give me a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in a polite way, he said, no.
Yeah.
But then some more conversations came around it, and I met him. I went and did some classes. I got a feel for it. And then once again, naturally, it kind of fell into place that one person was leaving, so a spot was available, trialed a couple different people, and I was a part of that group, and I was the best fit for what they needed at the time. And, from there, as we said at the top, all of the things that I've done in life up to this point, the different careers that I've had, has definitely set me up for the best success possible to have a career in this and not just have a job. So it was a very quick turnaround. I was at F45 for, 9 months. And in the last 3 months of that, I was starting at Platfrm. So it was a quick transition. A total of 2.5 years I've been in the industry, and 2 years of that has really been at Platfrm.
When you were starting that journey, throughout that journey, F45, moving to Platfrm, what was your mindset like when it comes to, we talked about in that previous chapter, the embarrassment and the self-sabotage, all of that. How did that play into this chapter that we're speaking now about?
I was trying to connect and to try and relinquish the embarrassment and the feeling of failure by starting to welcome people in and, have the conversation naturally arise of, oh, I'm not actually seeing anyone because I am divorced. I'm 26 and I'm divorced. And that's an embarrassing thing to say, but trying to get it out as much as possible in a natural way to people that I feel that I could potentially trust to kind of gauge reaction, because the feeling of embarrassment and the feeling of failure was all up in the mind. I lost the battle in my mind before, the battle was even fought. So it got to a point where I went, okay, well, maybe it isn't. Maybe there's other people in a similar situation to me, of a same age demographic. And I found that there was, there's quite a few that have gone through not a similar journey to the point, but a similar journey from the point. And that's what helped me get over the feeling of embarrassment and shame and failure around it, was allowing some people in and just being like, well, this is what happened and I feel awful and I feel this way about it. And then the confirmation of, well, that's actually just normal. Lots of happens to everyone. Well, not everyone, hopefully, but
a lot of chunk of people, I think.
Huge chunk.
What what was your mindset like when it comes to I don't want to be here? How did you feel then?
Um, it still exists. I definitely will never shy away from that, and I think the people around me understand that it still exists and is still a very strong part of my character. Um, but the mindset has shifted to just trying to make the most of the opportunities, I guess, or at least trying to see something through. Um, you know, talking over this whole time, I never actually stayed in one place for more than, like 3 years at a time. So last March was actually 3 years in Adelaide. It's the longest I've been in, you know, one place at a time as an adult. This March will be 4 years. So that's actually might sound silly, but that's something I have to overcome. And last March, I had probably 2 weeks of a bit of a panic attack of like, naturally, this is a point where I'd just pick up and leave. And now I actually have to make the choice of sticking this one out. So that's where the mindset's been of just write it out. If you actually want a career and if you want something to last, you have to make the decision to make it last, and you got to stick to your guns and do what you say. Yeah. Um.
What does resilience mean to you?
Um. Your ability to bear hardship.
Okay.
Resilience is to me is the classic. It doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down; it's about how many times you get back up. Um. But I think further to that, it's understanding that if you get knocked down, you don't have to get up straight away. You can spend a bit of time. You know, a lot of people say sitting with their sorrow or wallowing in their pity. I think that's such a fantastic thing to do for a period of time, because you do still have to get back up. So that's what resilience is. And I like to imagine that I'm a resilient person in some facets. So yeah. And that's the probably the biggest thing that's been cultivated over this entire path and this entire journey is just being a lot of places and doing a lot of things that I didn't necessarily want to do, and that's a kind of beat down. But yeah, pushing through it, seeing it through, and finally being in a position where I get to be a decision maker to do the things that I want to do.
And I loved what you mentioned, like take your time, because I think I don't know if it's society or if it's just kind of where we are mentally, but a lot of the
Mm.
times we think that by a certain age or by a certain time, we need to have X, Y, and Z figured out. We need to be, I don't know, own the home, have the
Mm-hmm.
family, or do this. That if you want to switch up a chapter, or if you want to reflect on where you are and actually realize, well, maybe I don't want to be where I am right now. I
Mm.
think for a lot of people, they think of that as a failure. And I think that is the furthest thing from the truth. Like I think for myself, if I look back, we were mentioning this off air, like my journey's changed
Mm.
dramatically as well. Going from personal trainer to exercise physiologist to physiotherapist to now stepping away from that a little bit more to this podcast to, opening my own business. Like my journey and being at 30, I never would have thought that, oh, I spent 7 years in uni, like
Yeah.
to become a physiotherapist, just to like now be like, oh, well, actually, I don't like that. Like, I
Yeah.
don't love it as much as I thought I would love it. And I think like really reflecting and realizing that that's not a failure, that's just kind of where this journey or this next path is, I think is so important because,
Mm.
again, like, we're living in such a fast-paced world these days, and I think people want things now. People want things yesterday
Yeah.
even. And taking the time and realizing that things are going to change and like it's okay if things change, I think is scary. And
Mm.
like we don't like being scared. We don't like living in that fear of, okay, well, if I give this up or if I make this change, what's going to happen? I think that's probably why a lot of people might stay in that,
Mm.
in that rut or whatever it might be, because it's comfortable. And like sometimes we like comfort,
Yeah.
but it's I think important for, the person listening right now to realize that it's not, I don't think it is a failure to, make a change or make a shift or realize that if you don't like where you are right now, that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have the choice to change it up. That's one of the big freedoms that we have here in Australia, is that we're not actually set in stone to a single career or single lifestyle or anything like that. And I always like to, because I still get into that rut of like, I'm almost 30 and I should probably be closer to owning a home than this. I should probably be closer to a career than this. I do like to think of my parents quite separately. My mum didn't go to university until she was 42, because she didn't know what she wanted to do until then, but nor did she have the opportunity to figure out what she wanted to do until then. My dad's in the best career of his life, in the place that he wants to live, with a beautiful family and a great home. That's only come about in the last, 5 or 6 years, because everything else up until this point was just not it. And it was the constant change and change and change and change. But in 5 years of putting your head down and doing it, it's happened. Like, it doesn't take 20 years to build yourself to what you want. It might take 20 years to understand what you want. But once you figure it out, and once you get the ball rolling, it does feel like it almost turns around overnight, or it seems to be that way. But yeah, also the big thing from them is that I've got all the time in the world to make that decision as well. I can keep doing what I want or what I'm currently doing for a week, or I could do it for another 10 years. And either way, if I want to change it, I can. I can.
And that's important to realize too, because I think too, another thing that we might often look for is a perfect moment. Like, I think if you're in that mindset that change can happen when you want it to, basically, that's an important thing, an important tool, because sometimes we look for signs or we look for, the perfect moment or this and that. And I don't know that there are signs or there is a perfect moment. Like, and that's where I guess that discomfort comes in sometimes, like if we are in a comfortable situation and you want to make a change, or you're going through something for 10 years and you're like, oh, well, what's next, really? Like, sometimes it's just about maybe planting a seed and then going from there,
Yeah.
basically. The chapter that we were just kind of talking about, is that your current chapter, or where is that to now, do
For
you
sure.
think? Okay.
For sure. And I don't think it's moving on to another one anytime soon, but it also could. Again, that it's still in me to not be here. I still want to be somewhere else, but somewhere else is now less defined. It doesn't necessarily have to be Sweden anymore. It's just, I just crave the new environment. But in saying that, I just got back from a holiday with my best friends, and I'm like, well, that wouldn't have been possible if I wasn't living in Australia and we were catching up every week over a wine to plan it and stuff like that. So on one hand, it's still really in me to be somewhere else, and on the other hand, I think I'm finally accepting a place to be as well. And the jobs helped with that. I get a lot of gratification and a lot of confirmation that I'm doing a good thing with the people that I get to work with, both my co-workers and my clients. I'm getting that with my friends, because I guess we're all moving into that stage of life where while we're still in financial burden and stress in some ways, it's more like, okay, well, we've actually got adult money now, and adult time kind of a thing, where a wine on a Wednesday night isn't like it's a school night. It's like, that's what I would like to do tonight, and that's what my friends would like to do tonight. And having that freedom and that opportunity is just so nice.
Yeah.
So
No,
nice.
it's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
We talked about, and I asked you kind of near the beginning what your character was like in that first chapter. where do you think that character has evolved and shifted to this chapter now?
I think when you asked me that, I responded around failures. Lots of failures and mistakes and incorrect choices. And I also mentioned that were I to write an autobiography or somebody listening into this, it's definitely that it's a perception, and I perceive that journey or that part of the journey as failures. So I present it as failures. And over the course of time, I feel like the growth comes from I'm not presenting it as a failure, I'm presenting it as what it was. And that's all there is to it. I think that's where the biggest growth has come from, especially as I said in that last 6 to 12 month period where I have started to overcome the emotional boundaries and everything else to it. Where it's like, okay, I no longer see the decision making as failures. I see them as that was the decision that I made at the time because that's what I felt was the right thing to do. And that's what I would like to carry forward. I've got more wisdom with my decision making and a more understanding of the collateral effect of decision making. But as I said, just like back then, we still have to make the decision. It's how we make the decision now. So I think that acknowledgement is the biggest growth. And yeah.
To the person listening right now, if they are maybe afraid of failure or they're going through a period of the life where they feel like everything is going wrong for them, maybe
Mm.
everything is going wrong for them, you know, what is something or a takeaway that you want them to kind of know, really?
I think the biggest thing that got me through was the phrase, it's not forever, it's just for now. Because to me, it allows you to acknowledge that this is shit. And 1, 2, 300 things have gone wrong in a row. But all it's going to take is a couple upticks and then a couple more. And then you'll probably collapse again a little bit. And then it's a couple more upticks more than last time. So, yeah, just the phrase, as simple as it is, and it lacked a lot of meaning for a lot of time. Like, it's not forever, it's just for now. Frustrated me more than anything because it's like, you don't get it. You don't get what I feel and how hard this is, and this sucks, and you don't understand the failures. But at some point, and you won't even recognize it, where you will go, oh, it is actually a bit better. This week is better than last week. And then 4 weeks from there or 4 months from there, you'll go, well, actually, I'm in a better position than 6 months ago. It is getting better. And the pain isn't forever. No pain's forever. It's just for now.
You talked off air, just in the questions that I sent,
Mm.
the importance of community for you and the realization over the years of community. What does community mean for you? And what do you think the importance of community is for somebody who might be, at a place where, again, they are going through the failures or they are wanting something different or, they're just in that mindset of, I'm stuck.
Mm.
What is community like, do you think?
Again, I was quite lucky to have some really fantastic, close people in my community. And I know a lot of people don't necessarily have that. So, if you do have a couple good people around you, it's the old adage, like that's what friends are for. They're not your friends because you pay them. They're not your friends because you do good things for them. They're your friends because they want to be there for you. So for me, community is leaning on those closest to you and putting yourself in positions to let people in when you choose to. I don't think, and this is personal, I don't think you should, when things are tough, throw yourself into anything and everything just to get out there and talking to people and, getting it all out to any Tom, Dick, and Harry. I think you need to be wise and careful with who you are giving your burdens to, but there will come a time where you feel comfortable to give or to lean on to people like that. You just need to put yourself in those positions first. But it has to start with your close community, be that your friends or your family, or if you've got great co-workers, definitely definitely starting there because they'll keep you accountable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If it's anybody, it is that close community that you have that keep you accountable. And I
Mm.
think that's a scary thing too, because like you were saying as well just then, like sometimes I think it is hard because we don't want to burden other
Mm.
people. But I think if you are picking and choosing those people that it's okay to burden because they are part of your close community, I
Mm.
think that can be beneficial for you and them as
Yeah.
well. Because again, we don't know what's happening behind closed doors. We could even be living with somebody and not really know what's happening behind, the noggin up there. So
Yeah.
I think like if you are, you know, part of a community or have that inner circle that you are okay with
Mm.
burdening, quote unquote,
Yeah.
then I think it can just help bring things into perspective. And I think a lot of the times we don't have perspective when we talk about or when we think about, oh, so and so's like, very irritable today, or so and so's like this today. Like,
Mm.
again, we just don't know what's happening behind closed doors. Or I think if we just have that perspective, it really helps just really accept one another a little
Yeah.
bit more through certain times.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I like to think of it like, you know, the problem was I had no direction. And, as I said earlier, I lost the battle in my mind before I was allowed to see it unfold. But I was trying to solve a problem myself whilst being a part of the problem. But if you talk about it or think about it in a job, if there's a problem in the workplace, it takes more than one person to solve the problem. It's got to go to a whole bunch of different people to help fix the problem. So while the individual might not be the problem, there is something wrong, and the more minds that can be around to fix it, the better, the faster it gets solved, or the faster it can be on its way to being solved. And that's where, that close community really came into it because they know me intimately and they keep me accountable. Boy, do they keep me accountable. So, present them with the problem and they weren't afraid to tell me, well, actually, Brady, you are half of this problem here. So if you can start to fix your half of this, we can start working on the other half. And here's how we can help you do this. And here's what you can do to help yourself do this. You're not going to get that from a stranger that you met at salsa dancing because you just wanted to get out. If anything, they're going to make matters worse because they probably just want to be your friend as well and just say, oh, no, everything's fine. Things will get better. It's all very light and fluffy. You got to, yeah.
I think you have to have those difficult conversations sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think it's very common for us to maybe have, communities that not necessarily are toxic, but sometimes we put ourselves in situations where we we bring around people that might be more accepting to the things that we want to change. For example,
Mm.
like you were saying, like if you're just seeing somebody maybe at a salsa class or whatever, like yeah, they might not be as direct with you because they also don't know the last maybe 10 years or
Yeah.
whatever, right? So I think like it's very common for us to also sometimes be around people that aren't necessarily there for the best or the greater interest. And that's a
Mm.
hard pill to swallow as well.
Yeah.
Because again, like we don't want to be uncomfortable sometimes. And I think that's where too sometimes when are going through a tough time, that's where I asked, and the reason why I asked back, throughout your previous chapters, if you pushed people away, because I think
Mm.
sometimes like we try and get more comfortable in the situations we are. Whereas if we have that close community, they're the ones that hold you
Yeah.
accountable, make you a bit more uncomfortable because they tell you the truth sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's where we push away, really. So I think that's a very important kind of thing that you mentioned, really.
And that's why my time in Japan really felt like a double-edged sword because I didn't have my friends close to me. I could call them and FaceTime and we played video games together and all of that stuff. But because it was in such short bursts, there was almost no opportunity to be like, hey guys, I'm actually struggling here. It was more like, oh, I finally get to have fun with these guys. And then the only other person to lean on was my partner at the time. And that was good as well. So it was so conflicting to be like, everything feels fine. I don't understand why it isn't. And yeah, there was no accountability, or at least people close to me looking from the outside in going, you're not actually you right now. You're you, but you're off, and we can see it and we can feel it and all of those things.
I think a common theme that's also come up through this entire last hour really is vulnerability. Like you need
Mhm.
to put yourself in a vulnerable position to even come on the podcast and share your story,
Mm.
but also you need to have the courage, I think, sometimes too, to with your community, maybe speak up about the things that you're going through, or have the courage to reflect on what's not going right instead of just kind of going through the motions and continuing on the path that you're going through. Like, I think it does take courage to, again, realize and sit down, oh, I'm the problem, or
Mm.
something's not going right. I need to make the change. How do you think that courage came about? How do you think that tool? Because I think it's a skill.
Mhm.
Again, I think we're not born with courage. Well, actually, as kids we are, but we lose it down the track. But I think it's something that we need to hone in on and
Mm.
and really kind of practice. How do you think you practice that?
Um uh that's it's a bit of a tough one, because it's one that can't really pinpoint a time. I think it definitely comes from being a rat bag as a kid, and the parents saying, I I just want you to tell the truth. You'll still be in trouble because you've done something wrong, but you'll be in less trouble because you told the truth. Um, so I think that's a big catalyst for it. I think that close community as well, just your friends going, actually, you're wrong, and you need to realize that you're wrong rather than double down and fight against it. There was a lot of growth there from that. There was a lot of growth with my partner at the time around just realizing, okay, well, maybe I'm not right about something here, and I need to relearn, re-educate, and realize how I got to the point of being wrong. So lots of little moments and periods of time, and again, especially working at Platform, we're so people forward. People are vulnerable with us, so it requires us to be vulnerable with people as well, and share life experience and stories to make them feel comfortable, not just with fitness, but just being in that space. And yeah, so it's come from a lot of situations of, if I want to receive vulnerability, I need to be vulnerable, and if I want to be better, I need to be more vulnerable still. Yeah, it's acknowledging that I'm not good at this thing, but want to be better.
For the person that's listening right now,
Mm.
what is a takeaway that you want to leave them with? There's a
Yeah.
lot that you've left us with.
That's an interesting one. I don't feel like I am in a position to give anybody a takeaway. Um, Somebody might listen to this and say, "Wow, I'm going to take away X, Y, Z. This guy persevered and got through it and is in a better position for it." And somebody might listen to this and go, "This guy sounds like a bit of a wanker." So I don't want to direct anybody to a takeaway. Yeah, that doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel right. I think if you took something away, I think that's fantastic. And if you didn't, I think that's fantastic.
I love that answer, really, because I think, again, that's being self-aware, really. And I think that's a skill that really, like, you need to be continuing to practice, really.
Mm.
But I want to thank you for sharing your story, for coming on the podcast, being vulnerable. But just kind of like, again, going through your path and your journey, because I think too it is hard to look back and to kind of connect all of these things to where we are at our current chapter. Like,
Mm.
I know your chapter is still going, all of ours are, but like, I think it is something that a lot of people might just want to be like, well, it was the past and let's not talk about it
Mm.
because, we have that embarrassment or we have that this or that. So, yeah, thank you for coming on
No,
today.
thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.